All right, well, it's my turn to welcome you to this webinar. My name is Virginia Sisiopiku, and I'm a professor of transportation engineering at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. And I'm here today with my colleagues, Mehri Mohebbi from the University of Florida Transportation Institute and Dimitra Michalaka from the Citadel. To discuss with you some findings that we had from work that we did on how to build diversity and enhance inclusion within the transportation workforce. This webinar is sponsored by the STRIDE Center, and STRIDE is the 2016 USDOT Region 4 University Transportation Center. STRIDE is a consortium of 10 universities and colleges in the Southeast, with the University of Florida as the lead institution. And our mission in STRIDE is to develop strategies that reduce traffic congestion. I would like to invite you to contribute questions at any time through the chat box. And after we go through the presentation, we would like to entertain these questions and open it up for discussion. So our motivation behind our study was to better understand the prevailing changes to the transportation workforce and how this should be addressed. We recognize that there are a lot of changes related to demographics. As the current workforce is aging, we think that there is a need really to look at ways to attract the next generation of transportation workforce. And along with this need comes an opportunity also to address existing issues related to racial and gender diversity in the transportation workforce, which is a concern since the current workforce does not properly reflect the nation's demographics. I think that many of us agree that the diverse transportation workforce will be better prepared to understand the diverse needs of our community and better prepared to serve such needs in an equitable as well as effective manner. So diversity matters, not only as far as the provision of transportation services, but also because it has impacts on other aspects of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Through our research, we see that the diverse workforce, transportation workforce, is likely to provide a diverse set of transportation options that will serve the mobility and accessibility needs of our transportation users. So by providing ways for transportation to healthcare, for example, we can address health equity issues. Transportation also can affect social equity, and overall, the well-being of our communities can be positively affected if we are able to provide good transportation services for all. And the workforce diversity will help us find policies and plans to support equity, prioritize investments, as well as by diversifying the transportation workforce, we can take under consideration social, physical constraints of users in all aspects of planning, designing, operations as well, and maintenance of transportation facilities. So with this in mind, the aim of our work was to develop a framework of equity, diversity, and inclusion for promoting diversity in the transportation workforce. And in doing so, we wanted to explore what others have been done and where are the opportunities to learn as well as the gaps so that we can address them more effectively in the future. Although we focused specifically in the Southeast region, we looked at the existing body of knowledge on diversity in the workforce throughout the country, and we identified notable practices from across the nation, which we considered then as we try to develop a set of strategies and tools to address diversity issues in the transportation workforce. And with that, I would like to turn the microphone to Dimitra, who will discuss more of the methodology, followed by Mehri, who will present the results. Yes. So let me, I'll stop the share of my screen and hopefully Dimitra will pick up from here.
Okay. Thank you, Virginia. I'm Dimitra Michalaka. I'm Associate Professor at the Citadel. And in this study, in order to accomplish our objectives, we did three major tasks. One, we looked at the literature review that is on workforce diversification and state of practice. Then we developed a leadership workshop that focused on the specific needs and practices that are necessary in order to do recruitment, retention, and promotion. And I will talk a little bit more about the workshop in a few. And then we summarized the literature findings and the findings from the works for the leadership workshop, because we had a survey and breakout room discussions. So the leadership workshop focused on four different things. One was to provide the key insights on the barriers and challenges that transportation agencies encounter when they're trying to diversify the workforce. Then we looked into informing leaders in transportation workforce management about what are the different needs that underrepresented groups have, especially when it comes to the transportation infrastructure needs. And then emphasize the significance of training and interdisciplinary skills, especially when we talk about retention and promotion. And then finally, develop a list of effective and meaningful strategies to be considered by agencies when they are trying to diversify and support their current diverse workforce. When we started the leadership workshop, we did it with an introduction to what exactly equitable workforce looks like and what are the different steps that agencies have to take. Then we provided a survey to the participants, and then we broke the participants to 3 breakout rooms, and we asked them questions in the first breakout room when it comes to what do interdisciplinary skills mean for your agency that you represent. In the second breakout room, we looked at effective strategies to ensure that interdisciplinary skills are there for the future workforce. And then finally, the third breakout room looked on how we can develop a 2-year plan for the different agencies when they look in this workforce development. We had 64 participants, so the workshop was advertised by Stride and the University of Florida Transportation Institute email list and newsletters. And we had 64 participants from all across United States and beyond. So we had some people from outside United States joining. And the percentages of participation in terms of U.S. regions look like 60% from the Southeast, 22% from Southwest, then 5.5% from Northeast, then 4.5% from Midwest, and 4% finally from the North. Sorry, I said Midwest, and then 4% from the Northwest. And then in terms of sector, we had the most participants, like 47% from DOTs and FHWA, then 22% from academia, and then the rest were from cities and MPOs, private sectors, and a few from transit agencies. And now I'll pass it to Mehri that she will talk to us more about the findings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dimitra. I'm Mehri Mohebbi. I'm leading the Transportation Equity Program at University of Florida Transportation Institute. I need to stop my video. I do apologize about that because my internet connection is not that good. So I do apologize about that. I start sharing my screen. Let me see. Yes, okay. So to understand existing efforts on diversifying the workforce in the Southeast, what we did was that we prepared a list of DOTs, MPOs, and major cities in the Southeast. For MPO sampling, for example, we considered geographical location, urban, suburban, rural, and size of agencies and communities that they are serving. So it was during the fall and winter of 2021 that we identified stakeholders, and we contacted them and asked them questions about existing DEI effort or initiative or advisory group, and also whether they have an updated affirmative action plan. And with updated, I mean whether their affirmative action plan was updated in 2020, 2019 and afterward. The table that you see provides more information about the funding from this part of the stakeholder outreach for our project. To provide you with some examples, Metropolitan Orlando, for example, in Florida, has a task force for workforce development, and they conducted an equity audit. Another agency in Florida, Hillsborough Transportation Planning Organization, which is a Florida TPO, Transportation Planning Organization, is taking primary step there, as they mentioned, to diversify their workforce, and they have done some of this work that you see in this table. In South Carolina, for example, both the Central Midland Council of Governments and the Berkeley, Charleston, Dorchester Council of Governments, they are following the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act guidance, which is a guidance by the U.S. Department of Labor 2021. And according to their representative, and equity and diversity and inclusion have been built into the work of these two agencies. And looking at this sample, which we try to have a very inclusive sample, looking at this, it's clear that each agency is at different point on its journey to reach equity goal, and many of them are using unique approaches, but there are fragmented effort across the Southeast in this regard. As you see, like for example, from the table, I can explain a little bit more. Among the MPOs, we see a good number of MPOs having updated affirmative action plan, about 68%, as is the same for the DOTs. The majority of them, 71%, have the updated affirmative action plan. But when it comes to having a DI initiative and program or advisory group, only 28% of DOTs mentioned that they have such a thing, set up or in the earliest stages of establishing an DEI initiative program or advisory group. So we had, as Dimitra mentioned, we had interactive exercises as a part of this study that kind of provided participants with an opportunity to examine the topics discussed in the first part of the workshop that we had. And they also shared their experiences regarding the strategies and tools that we introduced in the first part of the workshop. Here, what I'm sharing is the lessons that we learned during each of those breakout room discussion. And afterward, I will talk about a model or a framework that we developed for the Southeast states based on the survey that we had, and also which was during the workshop, and also the finding from the first phase of the study and the breakout room discussion as a part of this study. So let's start from the breakout room number 1, which mainly focused on understanding what is the meaning of interdisciplinary skills. So the first thing that was discussed during this breakout room discussion was that presently what we see, efforts around promoting interdisciplinary skills in the transportation workforce are centrally focused on technical skills. So we see a strict focus on technical skills among the transportation agency. What is missing from this equation is that transportation industry needs to create diversity in the skills such as like communication, interpersonal relationship, emergency management, enforcement, critical thinking, conflict resolution, for example, which is a very important part of the equation, specifically when you want to create an environment that provide the platform for meaningful engagement with the community and stakeholders. And it's exactly what we call human skill, which is the missing piece of the puzzle. And then the second lesson that we learned was that the industry as a whole encounter a wide range of barriers to recruiting skillful individuals. One of those barriers is, like, for example, salary constraint. We see lack of flexibility in hours and locations of the work. And also we see heavy responsibilities compared to the salary that is provided in the transportation industry. The next discussion point, a lesson that we learned during this breakout room discussion, was that with very few applicants, the transportation industry cannot be exclusive about skills and kind of targeting one specific skill because there's a huge lack of a good pool of applicants when a job is advertised. And then also public agencies. They want to consider, there are some public agencies that they want to consider the possibility to employ international applicant, which kind of opens the door to many college students and skillful immigrants. But there's a huge visa constraint for those public agencies when it comes to hiring people who don't have American citizenship or who are not the resident of the United States. The other thing that is important when we talk about the interdisciplinary skill and the meaning of interdisciplinary skill for different agencies is that if you want to have interdisciplinary skills in your agency, it's important to consider some of the factors that play a very pivotal role. One of those is a salary. Salary based on competency can lead to a better retention outcome in a broader perspective. And salary is one of the roadblocks to hiring skillful practitioners in the public agencies specifically. Some agencies, for example, have regular, every 1 year or 2 year evaluation system to help individuals seek, higher salaries based on certification or training, like, for example, moving from technicians to engineers, but it's not something that you see in all agencies, in all public agencies. And then at the end, to improve retention and encourage individuals with higher skill level to continue their career path in a public agency, agencies should take steps and kind of move forward, changing existing policies and practices. And some of those are related to things like providing employees with flexible hours, providing and dedicating specific time for training and career mobility, and also providing some incentive for employees to get involved and in the professional organizations and kind of take additional responsibility outside of the job description that they have. And in the long term, it will result in kind of a salary increase because it will kind of provide them with the new skills and that can kind of help them in the process of career mobility. So we had the second breakout room, which focused on effective strategies to ensure interdisciplinary skills for future workforce. The first strategy that was kind of discussed was that the lack of diversity in the education system is one of the main contributors to the lack of diversity in workforce. So a proposed solution to the problem is to minimize attrition in education. And then it's also important to introduce the benefit of engineering and transportation job early by creating student engagement opportunities in the education system, providing opportunities like such as a specific project involving student in some specific project or internship. Some agencies are doing that, but it is still kind of a missing piece of puzzle for so many agencies across the Southeast. And then the next consideration was that educators should facilitate interested students to kind of explore vocational educational opportunities as kind of opposed to traditional higher education opportunities. It's very important to see, you know, what we can do outside of the traditional education system. And then the next thing to consider is that the importance of non-monetary incentives. They're very important, including like offering paid time off for training and professional development. There are mainly the paid time off opportunities are very limited for so many agencies, and they're mainly used for the family reasons or personal things that come up for employees. But there are very few agencies that consider paid time for training and professional development for their employees. And then also employees value flexible work schedules and the ability to telework. And it's kind of the changing environment of the workforce is something that the transportation industry should be mindful, specifically public agencies, about that. The transportation industry is kind of have competitors like the big corporation from the private sector who are working on similar issues, and they are providing very more benefits, non-monetary incentive and benefits to the employee, and it's something that transportation industry also should be mindful of and find ways to be successful in attracting a skillful individuals. And then the third breakout room, we talked about how we can develop a 2-year plan for your agency towards a diversity plan. As an immediate step for diversity planning was that transportation agencies should reach to their employees and the whole, their whole workforce and different units to understand what are the existing barriers and roadblocks. And it starts with establishing employee resource groups and clubs to kind of involve all employees from all levels of job. And then to ensure inclusion throughout the process of diversity planning, agencies should seek an institutional shift toward becoming more responsive and building diversity task force that kind of include prospective employees and also interested employees in it. And unblocking communication within an agency is one of the most important steps forward. And several agencies right now across the Southeast, they are using online platform, coffee hours, and other kind of informal opportunities to maximize interaction among employees at different levels of decision making, while they are kind of emphasizing of the involvement of them in the diversity planning. So it's very important to kind of provide those informal opportunities to come for conversation, and also dedicating some time for that, because there are some employees, specifically the ones who have a very demanding job, like drivers, for example, they don't have enough time to get involved in anything outside of their routine jobs. It's very important to consider some specific time for those type of interactions and kind of helping them to be a part of the diversity planning process. And then at the end, it's important to develop a plan with equity and inclusion in mind. And this approach, as I mentioned, required creating a responsible employee group to review, comment on the plan, and also providing all employees with a short version of plan for the feedback in different stages of the planning process, and then inviting external reviewer from other transportation agencies or other public agencies even to kind of help us to develop the plan and make it in a way that kind of in the long term results in a better outcome and inclusive environment for our workforce. And before any steps, which is this part is one of the most important steps, before doing anything, it's very important to conduct a self-assessment for our agency to understand that what is missing in regard to existing practices related to hiring, related to retention, related to promotion, and also who is not considering the whole process, who is missing from those activities, who is missing from, when we are talking about policy change, for example, who is missing from the table of decision making. And then as a part of self-assessment, agencies should focus on creating an environment for accountability-based engagement of employees. And sometimes it requires changing existing policies and kind of intentionally seeking institutional change within the organization. It needs, changing the way that we are thinking. It needs to change the lens through which we are formulating the strategies, and also changing the tools that we are using to measure, the effectiveness of the strategies that we are using. So this graph shows a model that provides tips to be adopted by transportation agency to help them fill the existing gaps regarding diversity and inclusion within the workforce. As you see here, we introduced 3 P's of equitable transportation workforce development to create an inclusive workforce. The first P is promoting employees' engagement in diversity planning, which includes evaluation-based time dedication to diversity planning efforts, specifically for employees who have a more demanding job. The second tool is providing specific measurements or tools for constant communication with employee groups. And then at the end, providing an environment that for transparent communication on existing internal opportunities, and be transparent in the whole process with the whole employee groups. The second P is prioritizing investment in areas lacking diversity, which mainly focus on career mobility opportunities, time dedication and funding for external and internal training, which is required for career mobility for each employee. And then third consideration in mind is providing opportunities for engagement in professional organizations for different group of employees in different levels of jobs. And at the end, providing non-monetary incentive and benefits, which include dignity-infused engagement plans, which mainly emphasize having a candid conversation with employees with specific needs and who require a specific accommodation, and also be flexible and provide case-by-case accommodation for different employees. And at the end, transparent structural shift and policy revision. If anything happened in regard to retention, hiring, or promotion, any type of policy revisions, we need to be transparent in the whole process. And also we need to have employees being involved in those decisions. And overall, in transportation agencies in the Southeast are in kind of earliest stage of initiating their EDI efforts that kind of ultimately contribute to their equity goal. We at the end of our work, we suggested that transportation agencies in Southeast start having collaborative efforts with neighboring states. There are opportunities to visit and learn. For instance, Georgia DOT may be willing to choose an innovative practice from Florida DOT rather than learning from Washington DOT. There are some things, some very fine factors that are very, region specific, that is very easy to understand those when you are working with your neighboring state. And DOTs in the Southeast need to have a regional approach to workforce development and build a strong relationship with neighboring states in order to collectively solve existing workforce issue. Ultimately, these practices, will lead to a workforce that kind of represents the communities they serve, and at the end, it will lead to a better transportation experience for everyone in the whole region of the Southeast. So thank you for your time, and frankly, thank you for being with us today. We are now opening up the webinar for questions. Please enter your question in the chat box. There's also a link in the chat box to a survey. We will be happy to have your feedback. Here also is a list of upcoming webinars that you can participate to this slide, and we are also putting the link to the chat box. So we are looking forward to the questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mehri and Dimitra. I don't see any questions currently on the chat, but I would welcome anybody in the audience that would like to share any thoughts at this time to use the chat box so that we can share this with the rest of the participants. I thank everybody for participating. As many of you know, this webinar will also be posted on the site website. So if you'd like to check the slides, or if you have any questions for any one of us, you are welcome to reach out to us directly. So there is a question that I see. Could you please share some more specific examples of non-monetary incentives? Mehri, would you like to take this one?
Sure. So non-monetary incentives include like providing educational opportunities for employee, for example, or case-by-case accommodation, such as, for example, there were some agencies in the Southeast that during the hurricane, they provided more time off for that specific occasion for their employee to be able to deal with the insurance companies related to the effects under housing in the house or their business. So it was something that considered for the agency, and it was not something that otherwise is provided. So they consider it a part of their time. And I remember that for one of our discussion, there was an agency that provided 40 days for their employees as a paid kind of consideration for the ones that had a serious damage to their housing. So it's one of those, and they're mainly based case by case accommodation. But there were some agencies that also considered accommodation for caregivers, for example. So they provided them with, and there were some that for drivers, for example, they provided them with our work hours that kind of help them to take care of their kids or their older parents that are living with them. And so they're working at night, for example, to be able to do the things that are related to their caregiving responsibility. So those are some of the examples of the non-monetary incentive that different agencies can provide to their employees. And then we also will have a report being published, and in that report you will see more examples about, and so you will see everything in detail in that report. It will come very soon, I think in the next months or so. Thank you.
All right, and we have one more comment and question. I read for you. This has been the most useful webinar I have attended in a long time. And we thank you for these kind words. Thank you very much. Can you post information about your published study? Also, for agencies wishing to learn from you in more detail, what might be the options for this? I represent the NSF-funded Aspire Engineering Research Center, focusing on structure of electrified transportation. So there are different ways to learn more about the study. The STRIDE website will host our report. So the report provides more information. Another good resource is us. So if you like more information than the report provides, then you can reach out to Mehri or any of us, and we can discuss. And we do have some continuing work as well, so you can be on the watch to see our suggestions from the follow-up project that looks at how we can provide some education to our students so that we better prepare them to enter the workforce, and while keeping in mind that diversity and inclusion is an important consideration. Anybody else would like to add anything to that?
I would like to add something. So the transportation equity in general is a very important topic, and it's very essential for our transportation practitioners and policymakers to kind of be sensitive about the different issues that communities may face. as a result of our transportation intervention. So we, UFTI specifically provides some resources for transportation equity education for practitioners. So if you want to just check the website, it will be a very good source for you too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mehri. And I see one more question. Do you have any examples of how to connect students with vocational opportunities outside of traditional education? Do you partner with high schools or trade schools? So I can start this, and then maybe, you guys can chime in. In our area, for example, in Alabama, we have several high schools that make this connection. So it is important for us really to reach out to them, and we do that through our volunteer activities or K-12 initiatives. But we don't have, I'm not aware of any specific guidelines on how to make this work best. But often, our initiative to create those links between what is needed from the agencies and the students who have not decided on careers yet, and work with them and the community colleges as well, is what starts the process and makes it successful.
Yeah, as Virginia said, we do similar efforts. So we talk with K through 12 students in all levels, from primary school all the way to high school. So we host some activities at the Citadel or through different schools, for example, the government school or some high schools in the area, that we talk to them about transportation, workforce, and what is needed, or what are some opportunities that they can have in those areas. So we even host summer camps that they're week-long, and we talk about the different engineering opportunities, this field that exists and is viable, and they can go to these fields.
All right. And a related question, have you seen any effective strategies for opening realistic workforce opportunities in the trades for adults with families, work responsibilities, etc., who are well beyond high school graduation?
Can you elaborate a little bit on that? I'm like the person who asked this question. I'm trying to kind of understand.
All right, perhaps it is for, if I understand it correctly, is how people that are adults, I mean, not in the K-12 system, can be trained or retrained for jobs in the transportation workforce while they are trying to balance, learning new skills with existing work and family responsibilities.
I mean, there are scattered examples, but like I remember from some of the interviews that I had for some of the projects that there were some examples of that, but I actually don't recall it in detail. And it was mainly some examples from public transportation agencies. So if the person who is asking this question can follow up with me, I can find the details and share. It might be helpful for another agency, but I don't have it in my mind exactly right now.
Yeah, and they followed up saying that, they are more concerned, they find it harder to inform adults in the community how they might be able to enter the trades without going through 2 to 5 years apprenticeships.
Okay, I understand. I understand right now. So they were some examples actually. I remember one specific example. It was not from Southeast, but it was from a an agency, in a public transit agency, I remember, from in the West, and then they specifically worked with people with limited or no access to housing. And they kind of wanted to kind of provide opportunity for individuals from that specific groups to be able to join the workforce in transportation. And in many cases, those individuals lack certain education required, but there are jobs, and they kind of worked with some nonprofit organizations that are working with those groups to kind of provide information about existing opportunities within their agencies for those individuals. And there was also a returnship program for people who has been recently incarcerated, and they were coming back to the workforce, and they were doing the similar things. But if you want more detail on that, I will be more than happy to dig deeper and kind of find examples for you if you follow up later. Thank you for the question. That was a very, very good question.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. And we have one more question. Would you have different recommendations for state transportation agencies as opposed to local agencies? To me, the recommendations are similar, but of course, you know, the needs as well as the, you know, the financial support or time support or the requirements of each job is different. So I think based on what we learned from the input that we received, each agency has some room of improvement, and based on self-assessment on where we are at this time and what their employees feel that they need in order to succeed in their roles, as well as you know, what they see as far as equity and inclusion, they will then use the resources that they have or require even more resources in order to address those issues more effectively. So I think the overall recommendations may apply to a variety of agencies and settings, but the ones that will be prioritized may vary based on the type of agency.
So I want to just add something to what Virginia mentioned.
Yes.
So the reality is that, you know, so many we see issues around the equity and diversity and inclusion in agencies, and it's kind of it's not an issue that can be solved overnight. So we need a process that kind of help us to overcome the issues that we face right now. And for that, we need to intentionally and actively seek, you know, institutional change, and kind of providing an opportunity for you know, bolder steps to be taken in so many instances. And for that, I think state agencies have the power to kind of use, as Virginia said, their resources to kind of change the kind of enforce those changes and kind of, or be the pioneer for those changes in the whole state. I think it's very pivotal for them to be mindful of the power and that they have, and kind of build based on that and create a more inclusive situation in this state, in the whole state.
Thank you, Mehri. And I see also a comment that I would like to share with the group, saying that I think there is not enough public visibility on the variety of work that happens in a DOT. So maybe an open house, learn about your DOT event would be helpful, and I think this is a great suggestion, and I appreciate you sharing with the group. Yes, it is true, and then as people learn about the opportunities, I think we may actually excite them to join the DOT, and in that way we can address this aging workforce issue and prepare for the next step in workforce development.
So I just want to share something. There are some notable practices across the country in regard to that. There are some agencies that they have citizen academies in different, you know, capacities, and what they do is that they engage with the community members and kind of educate community members about existing opportunities in DOTs, and kind of they will work as the ambassadors of the DOTs to the community in so many, capacities. Whenever DOT wants to kind of ask the stakeholders, the community to get involved in the decision making, or if there is any opportunity that they want to have a community member to be aware of that. I think those examples are very useful for other agencies. One of the examples of those is the City of Seattle Department of Transportation, and they have a citizen academy, and I would recommend everyone to take a look at the fantastic job that they are doing.
All right, very well. Our time is almost up, so I would like to thank everybody for attending today. I would like to thank, of course, Andim for coordinating this, and the co-presenters, Dimitra and Mehri, for doing an excellent job. We appreciate you joining us, and I wish everybody has a great day. Thank you, and I'll see you at another webinar soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.